I am very, very interested in sort of how the obesity space is changing. I'm probably the most interested in that right now from a few different aspects. One, we are becoming increasingly sophisticated at being able to define what obesity actually is. And so you look at, for example, many definitions of obesity. You could be as simple as, oh, it's just excess body fat, right? And then you're like, well, what does excess actually mean? Like, where's the limit and why is there a limit? And so then you go to like the Obesity Medicine Association's definition, and they're like, it's a chronic medical problem, relapsing, remitting, wherein excess body fat causes abnormal physical forces of body fat, cardiometabolic problems, so on and so forth. And you're like, still excess, it's doing that thing, right? So how do we define that, and how do we predict it before it happens? Because every measure that we have right now is after the fact. We can only identify obesity after it's happened, right? So if you were to define obesity as excess body fat, and you're like, oh, well, really what you're defining is somebody's appearance, what they look like, but you can be very lean and have all of the medical conditions from having too much body fat, or you can have a lot of body fat and none of them. So it can't just be the body fat. So anyway, that's interesting to me. We can unpack that, but super interesting from that perspective. But also now we have great ways to actually treat obesity. You know, a lot of people listening to your podcast are what I would consider health maxers, you know, and I don't say that in a derogatory sense, but, you know, they are paying attention to their nutrition, their sleep, their training, lifestyle overall, and so on and so forth. Yet we still have this epidemic of obesity, right? And it's like, well, before we didn't really have good options. Yeah, you can tell people to eat less, move more. You can count their macros, you know, eat less processed foods. All of these things are true. Whether they're helpful or not, you know, they kind of, you have to look at the outcomes. And unfortunately, lifestyle-based inputs, change in person's diet, change in their exercise, while it does improve their health, it doesn't really touch obesity for most folks. As a statistic, individuals with obesity on their average lifespan will try to lose weight eight different times, like full-on concerted efforts to try to lose weight. It mostly doesn't work, meaning that they don't achieve what we call clinically significant weight loss, which is losing at least 5% of their starting body weight and then keeping it off.
That's a really interesting statistic. The other thing that stands out to me is that we had Dr. Andy Galpin on the show, I don't know, a year or two ago, and I hated him for this statement, but I loved him for this statement also, which is the answer to most scientific questions, quote unquote, it depends.
Sure. I mean, well,
and that's tough, right? Because it's like on the fitness side of things, it's just like, oh, you're obese because you don't move enough, you don't sleep, you eat processed food, you probably drink the majority of your calories. Let's just remove some of those things and we'll fix the problem. Okay, maybe some of the time that works. But then you also have to say like, hey, it depends, because you can spiral up and you can also spiral down. And in spiraling down, thinking of it like levels to a video game, you might unlock some sort of autoimmune issue, hyperthyroidism, some sort of issue going on with the pituitary gland. And then obviously there's psychology.
Yeah.
There's depth. And I actually very much appreciate, just to give people a little context, like if they've not checked out your Instagram, it's badass. Can you share with people your Instagram?
Yeah, Jordan_Barbell Medicine.
Yeah. And what's dope is that like you don't just put like one like sentence and you're like, this is the answer, guys. It's like, let's go through a carousel and better understand, this is my take, but here's why. And I very much appreciate that, because it gives context as to why you think the way you think. You're not just saying it blatantly. And then you provide, hey, here are my references. Here are the actual studies and the resources as to why I provided that hot take. And I just think that gives people tools. Here's the better question though, Jordan. Who's willing to actually lean into that?
That's a great question. Yeah. I mean, I think I get 3 different types of people that interface with me. One are the true fans that no matter what I did, they were going to be like, nice. Right. The other people,
I'm one of those guys.
Yeah. The other people are ops, you know, and I say that in a joking way because I don't think we're actually opposed. We generally all want the same thing. We want people to maximize their health span, their lifespan, have a high quality of life. We all want that. Right. But they disagree with my take and they're unwilling to suspend either their own disagreements and kind of look at my argument and see like, oh, where's the common ground? So those comments are generally aggressive and sometimes rude, but it's the internet. I got thick skin, so whatever.
Proud of you for that.
Not talking to them. The person in the middle is who I'm talking about. They generally don't have a fully formed opinion, mainly because they recognize, I don't know. a lot about this stuff. I'm not an expert here. I haven't waded in to the research. And even if I did, that's not really my calling. So it's hard for me to do. Those people are the ones I'm talking to because they haven't yet decided. So that's really the kind of.
It's really cool that you established that niche. I mean, you've obviously done the homework to see who your demographic is, what your ideal avatar is. You've been doing this for a very long time. So, I mean, I very much admire that. The other thing that's really interesting to me, Jordan, is the messy middle's hard, man.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, well, Joe Rogan said this, and then I've got like Brigham Bueller from Ways to Well saying this, then I got Paul Saladino saying this, and then this expert on Jay Shetty said this, and then I watched some sort of news outlet with, Dr. Oz or Bill Gates, and they gave this advice. I remember when my mom was alive, man, she was like, Bryce, I'm trying to do my best, but there's so much conflicting knowledge out there. From your experience, man, before we like really get granular, which I'm excited to do, where does somebody start, man? Especially like, let's just paint an avatar real quick. Like a baby boomer woman, she's maybe, mid 50s, either perimenopause or menopause. She's trying her best to kind of deconstruct, like in the 90s was low fat everything. And then in the early 2000s was like gluten-free everything. And now it's like, oh my gosh, there's peptides, there's GLP-1s, there's this carnivore diet, there's vegan diet. Everything's injected with everything. The vegetables are sprayed with a peel and all these things. Where does somebody start when there's so much conflicting knowledge and their brain has too many tabs open, dude?
And that's a great question because, most of the questions that they have require expertise in multiple domains, right? And I think that's where we have a big problem. We have people with deep levels of expertise in one domain, but not in another, and then they're given a recommendation, which doesn't mean that the recommendation is, quote, wrong per se. It just maybe lacks a little additional context. And so again, taken in isolation can seem like it's conflicting, right? And so, what does a person do who's not only have limited sort of expertise in the area, but also limited time? If you had unlimited time, what you would try to do is take all the experts, right, across different domains.
Put them into a smoothie, blend it up, and then drink all the expert advice.
And then further, what is the commonality? Because I would say that in general, most experts or people with a lot of experience and expertise will agree on, let's say, 75 or 80% of a particular topic, right? On the edges is where it starts to kind of fall apart. Now, obviously, I'm oversimplifying, but so what does that person do? What would I have them do? I would generally go look for a guideline first. Is there a clinical practice guideline related to what you're talking about? So, for example, the dietary guidelines for Americans. People say, the guidelines have caused obesity. And it's like, well, no one eats the guidelines. Have you looked at them? It's like, eat more fruits and vegetables, eat less processed foods, avoid foods with added sugar, all these sorts of things. It's like, that's reasonable advice, but nobody eats them. So it's like, okay, just the guidelines existing doesn't change behavior, but the recommendations themselves are fine. Or what about exercise? I heard I shouldn't do high intensity, or I should only lift weights, or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, let's go look at the
people are looking for a labeled hack.
Yeah.
And what I love about what you do is that when I think of like a bowling analogy, you do a great job of putting like the guardrails up of like, hey, in the beginning, the guardrails are here. Mm-hmm. The compliance is the science. Take your fish oil. Okay, if you did that the first week, week 2, I'll add something else. I'll make the guardrails a little bit further. Mm-hmm. And over the course of time, you start to increase that freedom and that flexibility for people where they have a little bit more nuance. Mm-hmm. But what I'm hearing also is a problem with the education system in the sense that, hey, Jordan, memorize these things for medical school, take the exam. I'm going to assign you a score. Based on that exam, you're going to get to the next level of the game.
Yep.
So then it becomes less about context and critical thinking and more about memorizing to play the game that they want you to play. And then as a byproduct, when you're given guidelines and you're in the real world now, you're like, okay, I see those guidelines, but there's no return on investment. And if you're looking to actually change behavior, you and I both know this 101. If you have incentive, you can reverse engineer to then create behavior. Yep. But if there's no incentive to follow the fucking guidelines, people are just like, screw it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to, like, it's a free for all.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with guidelines are a few things. One, no one reads them. And then 2, the people who do read them already knew the guidelines. They're the experts. And so you would want more people who are like looking for answers to kind of access them. And then further, there's some stuff in the guidelines that, okay, you could push back on, but you can only do so after you've amassed a lot of experience. And so to your example, you're like, yeah, you got to memorize the facts. You look, all tests in medical school are multiple choice, right? And so that sort of develops a different way of thinking about answering questions than what you would see in the wild.
You're not necessarily trying to find what's right. You're more obsessed with trying to figure out what's wrong.
This is a probability thing. When you're taking exams, you're like, okay, it's probably not that. I'm going to select this answer, and it's already presented to you. When you see a patient, there is no multiple choice, right? So it's funny, you get out of medical school, and then now it's your intern year, and now you're in residency, and you're like, oh, it's a total shift in thinking. Yeah, it's a different part of the brain for sure.
Yeah,
but you know, how do you test for that throughout? Like, you know,
yeah,
so it's hard. Super challenging. But yeah, people can be forgiven in my mind for having various belief systems that don't match, quote unquote, the best evidence that we have, because how would they know? Like, think about the expertise in any domain that you feel like you know a lot about. How would you have a person with no expertise identify a true expert? Right. And really an honest broker of information.